So welcome to the Sunday Sex School and Erectile Realities, working with unpredictable and absent erections. Thank you for joining us here today. Hello, guys.
Hey, Sean.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today and being willing to bring your skills and your experience in this realm. So I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself. Graham, would you be willing to speak first?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So my name's Graham. I work within the sexual energy community is what I call it, as a 30-year practitioner of Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, and teaching those skills for full time for about 20 years. I find in the last 3 or 4 years, although I've always had my own Taoist solar men's tantric practices, I find myself stepping more into the world and teaching those things in men's groups now about how to cultivate the Jing, the sexual energy in the body through meditation, movement, breath work, and this kind of practice. So this is what hopefully I'm going to be bringing today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Graham. Julian.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Julian. I live in Portugal. I'm English. And I started inquiring into conscious sexuality, I guess, as a teenager. I bought Mantak Chia's books, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy Through the Tao. When I was about 20, I studied therapeutic bodywork. And since then, I've been teaching bodywork and seeing clients one-to-one. And bodywork for me is using the body, which rests in the present moment, as an access way to how we feel about life. And in most recent years, I've been working and training in embodiment. And I feel with sexuality, if we embody our happiest, healthiest, erotic self, I really believe we would live in a happier, healthier world. So I share bodywork, touch, and talk to support people to do that, and a lot more recently with men. So I'm happy to be here today.
Lovely. Thank you, Julian. Sean.
Morning, guys. My name is 𝗚𝗿𝗲𝗲𝗵𝗪. I am the founder of cum.what.may, which is a non-profit community led by a team of sex educators, practitioners and facilitators. Over the past couple of years, we've held over 100 free events for the company, for the community, which is aimed at destigmatizing sex and having open and honest conversations about sex because of the issues like we're talking about today. So we also train people to run their own circles so that they can take it to their local communities and really offer support systems for people within the sexuality space.
Lovely, Sean. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Great. So before we launch into the questions, let's have a look at some language and some definitions that we'll be using. So the definition of erectile dysfunction, according to the National Institutes for Health, ED is also known as impotence and is a condition in which you are unable to get or keep an erection firm enough for satisfactory sexual intercourse. So the word impotence is no longer in general use today. So what you'll find us using is some of the language interchangeably, such as erectile dysfunction, erectile dissatisfaction, ED for short, erectile challenges, erectile vitality, and some other terms which the folks here today might use. And I just thought it might be useful for some statistics to understand why this is such an important subject and some of the impacts of erectile dissatisfaction. So according to the Sexual Dysfunction Association in the UK, approximately 50% of men aged 40 to 70 experience some degree of erectile dissatisfaction. A 2013 study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that ED affected 26% of adult males younger than 40 years old, and almost half of these were considered to have severe ED. The Men's Health Forum survey found that 47% of men with ED experience feelings of depression, and 57% reported feelings of low self-esteem. The British Journal of General Practice revealed that 68% of men with erectile dysfunction experience symptoms of anxiety. And the British Association for Sexual Health and HIV reports that ED can significantly impact relationships, with 63% of affected couples experiencing relationship problems. And NICE state that despite the prevalence of ED, only 33% of affected men seek medical help. So from these quite shocking stats, actually, it's easy to get a clearer understanding of the profound impact that ED has, not just on men's sexual satisfaction, but on men's mental health, their relationships, and their overall well-being. And as a sex coach for men, this is most definitely the biggest single issue that men come to me for, often after trying numerous other kind of fixes. So with this in mind, let's go to the first question. So what is the significance of the erection in your experience as a practitioner with clients? Julian, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Sian. Yeah, it's interesting, the definition given by wherever that definition was from about satisfying sex. So I think in this call, this Zoom, we're going to explore many ways to support satisfying sex, which support with or without hard erection. So thank you for the definition, and it's an invitation to bring different perspectives to that definition. So I just want to start by sharing two things. One, that we've all probably experienced, whatever our genital configuration, is that shame shuts down pleasure. And one of the things training as a sexological bodywork a few years ago that I identified was a layer of shame around having a penis, and the misuse of power that's perceived, or some call it the weaponization of the penis through the media, through pornography, the way that the penis is objectified and then perceived as a threat. So the very act of blood filling the penis could be seen as a threat by whoever feels threatened by it. So I just wanted to name the challenging significance for me of that for all of us who have a penis. And it wasn't till the second year of that training that I managed to let go of my personal attachment to that shame and know that I do not ever want to use my penis in a way that would be threatening to anyone. So I just wanted to name that significance of the erection. And then the second part, that my clients talk of the erection symbolizing being turned on to life, being able to rise up for what is exciting, and how satisfying the fullness of a healthy erection, whatever healthy means for you, is something separate from doing anything with that erection that we can miss as a man. So yeah, thank you. I think those are two opening experiences that are quite common to many men.
My background's kind of a loosely called spirituality, of course, being in the realms of meditation and these kind of things for a number of years. And really, because spirituality has a link to religiosity, I suppose, that it's almost like we have this body, which is, you know, the container of the soul, and then we have a penis over there that's not included in that. So it's kind of, the penis hasn't really been included in a lot of, outside of the few esoteric spiritual tantric practices, hasn't been brought in. And I was just reflecting on, so I was having a conversation with someone a few months ago who was for those who don't know, he was a 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗆𝗪 practitioner. And he noticed how in all the Vipassana retreats where they're focusing on body sensation, he'd done this for so long, not once had he focused on his penis. And so it was like, oh my God, my penis can be included in my spiritual practice. It's a part of me. And of course, then the whole thing of all talking therapy, all psychological approaches is whatever is kept unconscious controls us in an unconscious way. And so then we see the manifestation of that in a lot of religions, a lot of spiritual traditions, has this unconscious thing that hasn't been brought into awareness, hasn't been included in our holistic experience of ourselves, runs amok, you know? So yeah, the significance, I guess, is bringing erections, the penis, the joy of sexual energy back into the completeness of our being.
Yeah, the significance of an erection can really tie into manhood and what it is to be a man, and masculinity. Like if you look at symbology around the world, that the symbol for a man is the phallus. It really ties into the core of who we are. So when there are maybe issues, like, let's not spiritually bypass, like, it's shit. It's really shit when you have those moments of when an erection doesn't work. And I think it's really important to firstly acknowledge that it does feel bad. There may be tools that we give in this podcast, but yeah, like it really hits a man to his core when something like this happens. And yeah, it can be greatly significant to an individual, but in societies as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your shares. I think in my experience as a sex coach for men is that it absolutely rocks a man to the core, that often because of the way that age progresses, and I do tend to work with men over 40, is that when men are young and the erection happens spontaneously, often without conscious choice, you know, the erection's constantly present. It's there when you wake up, it's there in the middle of the night, it's there when you see a pretty woman, or it's there when you think these thoughts, you know. And then as men age, often those erections aren't as frequent, aren't as urgent, aren't as hard, aren't as present, and men have to work harder to experience that same level of arousal and urgency. And for a lot of men, that feels really threatening, particularly if they've taken a lot of pride in their sexuality, really owned the penis and had a lot of really enjoyed sex and intimacy and masturbation and self-pleasure. You know, if that's been a key thing for them in their 20s and 30s, if they're starting to get into the 40s and 50s and 60s and that's starting to ebb away, the confidence will, you know, I see it in a lot of men, confidence just ebbs away with it. And there's also something here for me about power, which you've kind of alluded to. You know, there's a man's sense of personal power is tied up with his phallus, with his erection. And what I see quite a lot of is a lot of men who are disowning their power. They're not fully stepping into their manhood because of the shame of being a man, of being perceived as being a perpetrator, and have possibly been shamed in their life when they have stepped into their power. So for me, working with men around erections, around their cock, around their penis, around their phallus, is also working with them around their sense of personal power. And when I say the word power, I mean healthy power, owning, stepping into, acknowledging, honouring their own divine right as men on this planet to step into the healthy power that can be possible for men. So yeah, penises and personal power are very much linked in my experience. Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. So what is the main cause of loss of erection? Graham, would you like to start us off on this one, please? Thank you.
So I guess my Taoist background, I'll reference that as the framework for what I'm going to speak about, really. So The idea in the Taoist health system is that we have something called Jing energy, which is connected to the chakra system, you know, that what we could call perineum base chakra, second chakra, and that we have a lot of that when we're young. So we run around when we're young. We can't stop moving. You know, I remember, God, sometimes in my late teens, I'd be like, oh, I'll have 3 wanks in a day, you know, and it never really didn't cross my mind that that would ever change. You know? And so I notice how that changes, you know. And so then the Taoist system, they say that we start to lose this, or this Jing energy in the body becomes depleted as we go through life. And that shows up in all kinds of things, lower back aches, you know, leg aches, loss of strength in the erection, loss of the if you like, the libido, we could call it. So, but then interestingly, in what you could call the Taoist system, loss of erection wouldn't be that would be more of a symptom than the thing itself, you know. So there'd be absolutely different ways that you can work with that. And so, but then there's a term, because obviously some men through an operation or through cancer, something, may still struggle to create Jing energy there, and so there's also a real welcoming of soft cock and the love of soft cock as well. So, but that's a separate thing. So if we're talking about the quality of erection, really the Taoists would put that into 3 categories, you know. So the reboosting of testosterone and Jing energy might come through what they do is, you know, some kind of building a bit more frame on the body, a bit more muscle, but, you know, leg squats, things like this. They also work on a lot of strengthening of the perineum. Also, the Taoists recommend regular self-massage, whether that's, and that doesn't really matter if the penis is hard or not, just gentle holding, developing a... So that's the Jing. And then on the Qi side, which is the emotional side, I call it, the solar plexus and the heart level, also learning how to bring a frequency of what I call love or peace or acceptance back to the experience of the penis and the sexual energy. And then the Shen, which is the mind. So we could say there's a physical health component, there's an emotional Qi health component, and then they have the mind, which is the Shen, which we could call the mental health component. And if any of those is out of balance, that can have a big effect on the penis, you know. So yeah, the way that I would tend to approach that when I work with the men is showing them techniques to boost their Jing. That can be diet. Are they getting enough rest? You know, are they exercising? Emotional level. Do they love their sexual self, their sexual energy? That's, you know, that's setting the Qi frequency. And also looking at any stories or past wounding they're carrying within the mind, or the Shen in relation to that, and how to process any trauma. And generally, when those things come back into play, you know, I've worked guys who are on the brink of having surgery because they thought that was it for them, even sometimes in their 20s and 30s. And when they implement some of these practices, you know, it starts to reignite that fire. So, yeah.
I resonate with a lot of what Graham shared. I use different language, but very much resonate. So there's a process called body poem, which is a talk practice. I like to support men with that, and through that discover what might be the reason for the loss of their erection. So I think it's important here to notice that there are pathological ED, and this can be from diabetes, it could be from an operation, as Graham has mentioned, can be a prostatectomy. Surgical intervention in the pelvis or in the nerves that serve the pelvis can cause erectile dysfunction. And then there's what's known as psychological and emotional causes of erectile dysfunction. And I think someone here today has shared that, it might have been Graham again just now, that the loss of erection could be seen as a symptom. So rather than, and then the approach might be, in any good health approach, I think we do well to serve the root cause of things rather than the polarity of the expression of the root cause. So ways that can do that, I think, work very well. And one of them, I call it poetry of the penis. And I'll ask a man, what's your relationship to your penis? And straight away, if they've got a name for it, oh, yes, I like to call it my cock and da-da-da-da. Or, you know, the very way that we speak about our penis can tell a lot about our relationship to it. So my approach, I teach something called relational bodywork. And when the penis is the focus that someone brings, what's the relationship to your penis? Do you have a word that you like to call it? What's your relationship to pleasure and self-pleasure? And starting to see, and we can do this with ourselves in self-inquiry, what is my relationship to my penis? So that can tell a lot. And it's based on curiosity and radical acceptance. So if it's like Sean said, really shit, and I feel absolutely lost as a man because I can no longer get a hard on, we will absolutely acknowledge that, not be like, oh, well, the soft cock massage, let's go there straight away. There is soft cock massage. And for myself, it's something I didn't explore whilst I was young and having raging hard-ons all the time. But then, you know, it's a lovely thing to explore as well. But I think it's important to acknowledge the root.
Yeah, thanks for those perspectives. And I think it's really important to discuss environmental factors within that as well. Obviously, each person will have their own unique expression and nuance of why they may be having erectile issues, which Graham and Julian have mentioned. But it's really important to mention outside factors as well, such as pornography, alcohol and drug use. For if you're a regular alcohol drinker or you use cocaine, then generally your blood vessels are going to be more constricted, which blood flow is going to be unsupported there. If you smoke weed daily, you're 3 times more likely to have erectile dysfunction compared to a non-smoker. And also our environment in general. So since the 1970s, men's fertility and semen counts, as well as testosterone, is down 50%. And this is due to environment with regard to our diet, but also what we surround ourselves with and the chemicals. So such as like BPAs and phthalates that are in soft plastics, or even in every fragrance that you have around the house, is pumping out chemicals, which is affecting men's testosterone levels. So yeah, we've kind of, as a society, we've sleepwalked into a real huge issue for masculinity.
And I guess for me, there's also something here around safety. We have nervous systems that regulate our whole state of being. Arousal is incredibly difficult to experience if you're feeling anxious, because anxiety produces cortisol into the bloodstream, and when there's cortisol present and other chemicals, it's very, very difficult to feel aroused and to get excited, and therefore it limits your availability for a hard-on. How masculinity is perceived and what it means to be a man, and if that is threatened, or if there is anxiety because the person doesn't feel safe in their environment, or they don't feel safe in that relationship, then it's going to cause anxiety, and that anxiety will impact the ability to experience arousal and full erection. So there's something there for me around environmental factors and safety. If we don't feel safe, it's going to be tricky. If we're taking certain statins or diabetes medication, or if we're taking drugs for other complaints, sometimes that will have an impact. And so if you are in the process of getting a diagnosis, or if you're already taking medication, anti-anxiety medications, for example, when you're next speaking to your healthcare provider, check in with them. If you believe this is affecting your erectile function, your ability to get a hard on, then talk with them about how you might be able to change medication, or you might be able to adjust the dose, that still the medication is working for you, but also it's not affecting your erections quite so much. Never stop medication or reduce your medication without consulting your medical practitioner. So, but sometimes that can have an impact, just making that switch. Okay, great. Oh, Julian, yes.
Could I add one external factor, which I think is so important? We've mentioned power, and I feel also the erection and its diminishment in my male clients when they're in a job, you know, power over structures. If you're many men that I've seen, if they're in a job and they feel their creativity is blocked, you know, their boss is always saying no, no, no to their creativity. I've had clients that have said that's affected their erection, and I see it like when we have the power and a purpose in our work, which we spend a lot of time in our work in life. I've seen that affect erection, and connecting people to their desire and their joy and their body and their sensuality has been a big help there.
Does pornography play a role in erectile issues? Sean?
Yes, it does. If I ever meet someone, whether it's a friend or a client, that has sort of erectile issues, the first question that I will ask them is, what is your relationship to porn? So there was a study conducted in 2020 that found that 50% of men that had erectile dysfunction with their partner were still able to get erect while watching porn. So there's obviously a clear significance there between men's porn watching and their relationships with their partner. The thing that I'm most passionate about with regard to this subject is how it affects children, or how it affects the younger generation, because there have been studies that show that the highest growth rate of erectile dysfunction is between the ages of 18 and 21. And a study published in The Guardian last year discussed that 1 in 10 9-year-olds have watched pornography. Also stated that 80% of people have watched pornography, including violence, by the time that they're 18, and 50% of those believe that women either enjoy or expect sex with physical violence or aggression, including airway restriction. So it's really important for us to be having these conversations, because this isn't, in the past, erectile dysfunction was maybe for people who were having hormone changes later on in their life, but this is becoming more and more prevalent with younger people. And it's a huge issue, and it happens, and it is because when you're watching pornography, you release dopamine. So firstly, you if you're watching pornography and you're having and you're masturbating kind of daily, when you actually come to having some sort of sexual intercourse, your dopamine levels are going to be down, which means that could affect your erection. But also that the levels of the intensity of what the pornography is, the way that dopamine works is that when you have a dopamine hit, the next time that you come to watch pornography again, to get that same level of dopamine, you either have to watch more minutes or you have to watch more extreme. So if you think about maybe like a 16, 17-year-old boy who's maybe exploring sexuality for the first time, if they've been watching porn for the past 4 years, then by the time that they've got up to 16, 17, when they're learning what touch is and what it feels like in the body, they've probably already watched gangbangs and really intense sexual acts, so that when they actually have these kind of softer moments, their body is completely desensitized, and therefore they have erection issues. So yeah, pornography is a huge issue for not just the later generations, but really for the core of like sexuality in the future for these generations as well.
When I do my training, quite a lot of the men who come on the training actually present with what they feel is porn addiction. And so the more that I have conversations with them and the more I kind of understand anatomy, I also reflect on, I wonder if it's porn addiction or dopamine addiction. And so that what I noticed is a lot of specifically men, because that's who I work with, who come in with a lot of stress, burning on their fight or flight mechanism all day in a stressful job, use porn in a way someone would use a glass of wine. It's like they come in, they dump their stress, they release the tension in the body through the ejaculation. And then, of course, there's not much left for lovemaking or for, for these kind of things. And well, the other thing I will notice on an energetic level, and one of the things about, I think Sean also pointed to this about getting back into the body, is that porn by its nature seems to bring men out of their body. So it kind of brings them into like a tension response, and kind of if you like, that chi is all leaking outwards. And so I think it's a really big issue. And now obviously it's so available, but when I was 18, you'd get a really crap VHS tape that had been passed around and recorded 100 times. You'd be squinting at it. You really wouldn't see. And now press your button on your phone and you've got everything available. So yeah, I think it's a really big thing, the dopamine connection and coming back into the body, as Sean was saying. Yeah.
I would invite us to imagine a triangle or a pyramid, and the meaning and significance and visual mental stimulation that porn provides through a screen being at the top of the pyramid. So this activates our dopamine release and pleasure centers in the brain, and we can get an erection, and then we can act on the erection and self-pleasure. And then the two bottom corners of the same pyramid, and inside the pyramid, we could talk about pleasure, satisfaction, satiation, eros expressed. The other two corners are our focus and our sensation. And with porn, it's all up there in the top of the pyramid until we get hard. And then it's like, oh, sensation, 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 with this major trigger at the top being the visual, the mental, the associative, the meaning making. Oh, look at what they're doing. Oh, like someone mentioned a gangbang. Oh, that's more intense. That's sexy. And our focus, which would be over here, is up on what is out of our body and out of our sensorial realm. So for me, with the men that I work with, it's how can we bring and drop our awareness to subtler sensations and get satiation there. And I support men when they're open to it and they realize that this pyramid is really not serving them, to dial up the importance of these other two parts of the pyramid and enjoy porn, but don't let it rule your life, perhaps. I don't judge people on their porn use, but when they realize it's not serving their life, we have these two other empowering, important parts which we can support ourselves or our clients back into, which is, where is my attention? If I might get aroused with a bit of porn and then turn it off consciously. Okay, what am I feeling in my body? Okay, wow. And when men can really feel a lot more satisfaction from lower levels of arousal, even the attachment to ejaculation can transform. Again, not shame-based, there's nothing wrong with ejaculating, but wow, I can get satisfaction and give to my sexual self rather than be all the way up there at the top of the pyramid all the time.
When I work with men, it is about bringing them back into their body, away from the mind-based arousal and coming back into the body, because that's where we live in our body. But primarily we are encouraged from day dot to be in our heads, to be achieving academically. How are we doing in our exams in school? How are we measuring up at work in meetings and targets and all of this head-based, head-driven stuff? So for many people, especially men, it is more difficult to then reach, and the body is shamed as part of that. Particularly masculine bodies in this context, shamed around penises and arousal and vitality. So suppressing the body and focusing on the mind. So it's inevitable that porn is going to feed that same story of being in the mind. And for me, working with men, it is come back to the body. Always come back to the body. What organically turns you on? What really turns you on? When you take all of the fantasy and the head-based stuff away, what really turns you on? Why do you want to have sex? Why do you want to have intimacy? Because it is more than just about orgasms, right? It is so much more about connection and feeling loved and being seen and validated as a human being. And all of that only comes through connection with another human being. Porn is a solo act. connection and being nourished and nurtured, and being able to nourish and nurture somebody else, that exchange of connection only happens through the kind of intimacy and care and nurturing that we're talking about. And erections are part of that. But if porn is too predominant in your life, then that connection is going to be interrupted by the absence or the difficulty with erection. How do you work practically with men with this topic? Julian.
Thank you, Sian. So I coach men in those other points of the pyramid. Where is their focus? So I teach men to map their genitals and their pelvis and their penis, soft, and if erection happens, hard, and notice the sensations there. And to tune into their desires, their core erotic theme is another part of it. So that work is called sexological bodywork. And that can be that we talk about it and they go and do it privately, or they do it in the presence of a practitioner, or we are giving the touch and they're noticing in their body. So that's a very hands-on way to, as you've described, come back into the body and notice what's happening there or what's not happening there. And then how do you feel about that? And what would you like to have happen next? What options are there for that man to choose? And another way is to do that more talk-based and screen-based, and with video resources, have them have a more embodied sense of what's possible and what's pleasurable in their body.
The first piece that I'd say to someone that I'd maybe have some erectile issues would be to release any sort of expectation or end goal of where you think a sexual experience will go. And actually that's for people in general, never mind people with erectile dysfunction. That we have this sort of linear way of, we think we have a start point and an end goal, whereas when we are fixed within that, we lose the creativity of what can actually happen within a sexuality space. And yes, it's certainly important to drop into the body and speak to your cock, like open up that conversation. I remember the first time I ever spoke to my cock, and I thought we had a really great relationship, and it said, "You've been abusing me for 20 years." And that was like the start of my sacred sexuality sort of journey, because I realized that I had a masturbation addiction, but I only found out when I spoke to him about it. I think it's also important to see where the mind goes. Something that's happened to me personally when I've experienced this before is that, say if I've had an erectile issue the last time I've gone to have sex, and I come into to want to have sex again, in my mind it's like, you're not getting it up, you're not getting it up. And then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that, so how you speak to yourself. So create these affirmations of, I am an amazing lover. I am powerful. I am strong. Like I am a sexually liberated man, whatever works for you. This isn't necessarily a fix for a problem. But learn to get good at everything else apart from penetration. Like there's a study that's been shown recently that a lot of women actually, that their least favorite part of sex is the penetration side of it. And when there is an erectile issue that could come up, the shame and the awkwardness that happens when you just stop, when you're in the moment, that can make the situation a lot worse. Whereas your cock isn't going to work every single time. So if you're already in your mind, like telling yourself that you have an issue, for example, I use my own experience with this, maybe once every couple of months or once a month with my own partner, my cock just doesn't want to play. But I've got the confidence to know to be able to pleasure her so that we finish on a high, like both people are feeling satisfied. And then I don't go into the story of my cock isn't working. I finish on the story of I'm an amazing lover. So really that the way that you talk to yourself and the way that you build those sort of neural pathways of Like, are you going to go down the route of I'm a terrible lover, my cock doesn't work, or would you rather go down I'm an amazing lover, my cock is healthy and beautiful? So yeah, those are some tips that I would give.
So I guess I'll speak to the energetics of sexual energy. So the idea of what you could call tantra is that there's a sliding scale of sexual experience. One is the subtle body, which we could call low arousal. And then we have the middle section, you know, if we did 0 to 10 scale, is I'm starting to feel aroused in my body as a physical experience. That might lead to an erection. And then as we get at 8 or 9 to 10, I call it the release valve. Our body can't handle that much pleasure, so we ejaculate. And so the release valve goes and we can relax back down again. That's how I witness it. And so what I often, in the beginning, invite men to do through certain breathwork and meditation practices is to experience that, or the intensity of the joy of that orgasmic experience is already alive in their body completely. It's just that they're so in the way that we associate, okay, dopamine rushes with watching porn. We can also associate our sexual energy with an erection. And it can be quite mind-blowing for men, especially who are experiencing soft cock, to find that the fullness of that orgasmic sensation can be felt 100% in their body without even having an erection. And so the first, the way I work with it is generally I show men the potential of that sexual eros is buzzing through all of life, every cell in their body already. And that just the experience of that can flip their understanding of the sexual experience completely, and that they can move that sexual energy like the mystics through the body without even experiencing arousal, and even can experience orgasm, well, not ejaculation, but notice that orgasm and ejaculation are totally different things, and orgasm and arousal are totally different things. That can be experienced as some people who are paraplegic experience, you know, orgasms with their hair being stroked or their skin being touched. So yeah, that's I train men to notice the more subtle, which becomes the more powerful experience of orgasmic energy. So
my work with men as a sex coach through the Sexual Empowerment Program, and also I offer masturbation coaching as well, is it's a very much a holistic program that looks at, yes, it looks about coming out of the mind and into the body and increasing the sensitivity of the sensations that you're experiencing. It works with energy and how to experience sexual energy in your body, rather than just focusing on the escalator model of kind of getting off and getting on at the bottom and then just working all the way up. So the section stage 1 of the sexual empowerment program is all about you. It's all about how present you are with your own body, how present you are with your sensations, how present you are to your own energy, how honouring you could be to your own body and your own cock. We use breath work and curiosity and presence and mindfulness, and the focus is on self-acceptance. And there is an element of separating orgasms from ejaculation, so that the focus is no longer on ejaculation, and not shaming the ejaculation either. But it is about health and well-being holistically. What's going on in your mind, what's going on in your body, what are you doing in terms of your life, how are you feeling vital and alive in your life? What are you doing outside of all of this that sparks you, that keeps you interested and engaged in your own life? And so it's this holistic body, mind, and soul. Could call it spirit, but prefer to use soul, body, mind, and soul approach. Is there a link between erectile dissatisfaction and premature ejaculation? Graham.
It certainly seems something that men present with in my training. There's two things that seem to happen for a lot of men: is their sensitivity increases as their libido lowers for some reason. It's a phenomenon I see quite a lot happening. And so that lowering of libido also often leads to a soft cock and not as much arousal. So there does seem to be this bridge And then I point to the beginning conversation that often these are symptoms rather than things themselves. And what occurs to me as I'm talking about this is actually the style of lovemaking we have. You know, we're very quick to blame ourselves. Oh, it's me that's getting it wrong. We don't question that the models of lovemaking we may have been given through watching loads of porn as a teenager might be the thing that's wrong. And so we've done a lot of training with a woman called Diana Richardson, who wrote Tantric Sex for Men, you know, and really her approach is actually soft cock, hard cock, doesn't matter. That what you're working with is the cock is really a massage tool. And then we have this crazy idea as men, you know, that we've all been programmed that the best massage we can possibly offer our partner is slamming a hammer against them really hard as quickly as possible for as long as possible, completely numbing ourselves and numbing them out. Again, I'm kind of saying it with Jess, is that however you want to make love is amazing. But also there is another technique, which is slowing down, finding the joy in the softness, and actually just that alone tends to cool the body down, so that this nervous system doesn't become overexcited, leading to the ejaculation. Sometimes, you know, making love in Diana Richardson's approach is actually not moving. It's actually just being inside and feeling. Literally, the sensation as you breathe may be a millimeter that way, a millimeter that way, and the exquisite feeling that can come from that. Actually, bizarrely as well, not only making the lovemaking longer as an experience, you know, but actually the quality, if you choose to go to orgasm, can be mind-blowing as it rushes through the relaxed body as opposed to the body that's holding on, you know. So I guess that's my reflection on that.
So imagine if you masturbate and you're using masturbation as say it's almost like training for the real thing, right? If you're like been like that, like over and over again, every day for 20 years, then you're gonna either have like oversensitive glands around your cock, or it's gonna desensitize. So really feeling into those sort of feelings within your cock, and it can cause both erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation because of just the way that you're training yourself for sex in that sense. So yeah, the touch is super important.
One is our disconnect from our body, which is all of society, all of we've been taught up into our head and stimulated by our smartphones, disconnected from our body in so many ways, in more intensity over the last decades. So one thing is that we're completely encouraged away. Our consciousness is harvested for marketing, our attention by this. And coming back to our body, those two other poles of the pyramid are, where do we put our focus? Is it in our body and our sensation, or is it in our eyes and our attention out? But that's coupled with an education which is, oh, men's pleasure happens in the penis. And this is your pleasure anatomy, without a regard to the fact that we are a continuum and we have energetic sensation is possible throughout the body, even in a paraplegic case, you know. So I like to support men into the curiosity and the wonderment of sexual energy and pleasure does not just live in the penis. So we've got this complete disconnect from the body, and then this idea that we're educated that the genitals is where all the action happens. And I think these two things are an insult to the potential that a man can have with his penis and his entire body. So I see ED and premature ejaculation shows up similarly and can be helped similarly by addressing those two challenges, and really beautifully, with very beautiful results.
Thank you. Yeah. In my experience, often both ED and PE show up at the same time. Usually one starts and then the other follows. So either there's a couple of occasions when he comes quickly and then he kind of goes into his head, and then there's some shame there, and you know, and then it's a rolling ball of a spiral down into shame and loss of confidence and self-esteem issues, and of course that just reinforces the whole thing. So yeah, absolutely. And safety again for me is, and this story I tell often. So if we look back to our prehistoric times when we were kind of living in small communities, obviously, you know, if we were creating pregnancies and children just within our small community, a lot of those children wouldn't survive. So men were having to satisfy their desires and were going out to other communities, and often, you know, one of my mentors used to say, well, the caveman is just like, yeah, I want to fuck her, and would get in there quickly, because if he was discovered, or if he was gonna, you know, be successful in impregnating her, be successful in getting his release, you know, that was dangerous, because her kind of brothers or family could come along and like hike him off, and it would be a threat. So in those circumstances, to ejaculate quickly was really important. So to get hard and come quickly was really important in those days. And there is an element of us still being, you know, there's argued that there is an element of us still being hardwired in that way. But that absence of safety can create early ejaculation. It can create difficulties with erections and early ejaculation, because we've got to get it done. And if we're not safe in our relationship, if we've had a row with this person and that's not been resolved and it's still lingering around, your nervous system will feel unsafe, and so your body will go into early ejaculation and you know, difficulty with erections. Again, it's all about safety. And sometimes also, I have to say, caveat to that, sometimes it can be great to have a 5-minute fuck on the kitchen table, or a 2-minute fuck on the kitchen table, if you're both up for it. Because how amazing is that? You know, to, you know, flip your partner around, or to be, in my case, to be flipped around, and just like, you know, sometimes that urgency, when you both have that, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So let's not all go that you've got to go like 45 minutes for it to be satisfactory. It can be 2 minutes. It's the energy and the connection between you that really counts. Thank you. Yeah, Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, and you mentioned about the 45 minutes, like it's hardwired in our mind, like we all want to have sex for longer and longer, and have these like tantric 2-3 hour experiences. A cock isn't made to be hard for 2 hours. Like so first, if you get out of your head thinking that a cock has to be hard for all of that time, and like come to acceptance that within those experiences it will ebb and flow, and it's okay that it goes down, and then it's okay that it comes back up. So yeah, I think when you start to go into this world a bit more, like that expectation of just being hard all the time is kind of stuck with you, whereas it's important to note that it's the cock isn't supposed to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julian. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend a book to everyone who's on this call, because if you care about this topic enough to have subscribed, there's a book called The Existential Importance of the Penis. And I just found it on the internet on the day it came out and was like, wow. I've half read the book and I'm loving it. And he says, the guy who's written it's worked with thousands of men, and the case studies in there are fascinating. If you have a penis or you don't have a penis, I think humanity would do well to know the contents of that book. It's very compassionate, it's very insightful. And he says the link between ED and premature ejaculation, he's got some really good stuff in there around, as Sean said, about listening to the body, how we might have been happy and healthy in our erections and our length of time, our ejaculatory choice. Sorry about the balloons, don't know why they came. And then something happens in our life. It might be that our partner invites us to move in with her, and then suddenly erectile dysfunction starts to happen. And then there's like, oh my God, if we pathologize the erection but don't listen to the message, we might be missing that level of commitment is too much, or I'm now scared of rejection. What if it doesn't work? So the emotional link between the presence of an erection or not, and also he talks about also those kind of safety that Sian's talking about. If we feel safe and we're able to be in our vulnerability as a man, this is very liberating, rather than quickly going, oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm ejaculating too quick and or I don't have an erection. But what is this telling me? And as Sean said as well, when he tuned into how I've been abused for 20 years, I find that in many of my clients, one of which said his partner stopped him masturbating in front of her because she said she was witnessing abuse. And so she sent him to me, and he was like, I don't want to treat my penis this way anymore. So we worked on how does his penis want to be touched, and he was able to do that, and it changed his life.
Would you have any advice for the partner of someone with erectile problems, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we've spoke about the individual experience of how it feels for a man when this happens, but then it gets amplified once our partner goes into their wounding of feeling sort of insecure, and it definitely adds to the situation. And obviously, it's a natural process to go through. So, firstly, for you, it's not your fault. Like it's something that's happening for your partner, and it's really important that you have compassion and empathy, and also learn to love a soft cock. Like a cock, yeah, is only hard for a few minutes a day. Like, actually give reverence and love, and be curious around a soft cock. Like, learn to give massage. And also, if your partner is feeling pressure when it comes to sort of penetration and penetrative sex, take penetration off the table. Just say, okay, we're not, because if you're feeling pressure about that, if you're taking away the pressure, then you're creating a safe container to be able to explore other things that maybe your partner can delve into without actually thinking about the end goal.
I think communication is the key, because obviously the partner may then feel non-sexy, like they can't turn their partner on, and so that's going to bring a lot of stuff up from then. And I think if I was to give advice, it would just be to be able to hold space for them, or to give them ways of communicating and sharing how they feel about that and unpicking that. I think that could be quite healing, you know.
Communicating desires without judgment and without reference to hard cock or not. Just like to hear, if you're the partner of a penis owner, to sit down with your partner and talk about what you enjoy, how you desire them. Communication, beautiful. And then the second thing would be to learn how to take, to invite your partner with their soft or hard cock to sit down and learn how to enjoy for your pleasure as the partner of a penis owner. How would it be, honey, if you sit down and I want to touch your body and your cock for my pleasure? In that instance, everyone I've ever spoken to with a penis says, I feel like I'm being worshipped and I feel absolutely sexy, regardless of whether my cock's hard or not. If they're drinking in your body and touching and just filling themselves up with juiciness, you'll feel great, they will feel great, and that will do a lot for your intimacy.
Thank you. Yes, I love soft cocks almost more than I love hard cocks. I will be quite honest. This is purely a personal reflection, and I think it does also help me in my work with clients. If my partner is wandering around the room without any clothes on, I will pay attention to what's happening, to his whole body, to his whole person, my presence is with him as a whole. I'm not just objectifying his cock, but, seeing him in his natural state is really beautiful. I think penises are so vulnerable. Genitalia is so vulnerable. I see my man in his absolute strength and his absolute vulnerability. And that together, whether he's hard or soft, is so beautiful. When my genitals are worshipped and honoured and being loved and being drunk in by my partner, I fucking love it. And I love offering that. I love taking a soft cock into my mouth, and maybe it will grow and maybe it doesn't. But that is just such a beautiful thing to offer and to give, and just to be in stillness, knowing that I'm holding this most vulnerable and this most strongest part of my man's body in my mouth. It's beautiful, really beautiful. So yeah. Yes, yes, I agree with everything else that's been said. So slightly distracted there. Could you say something around prostate cancer and loss of erections? I'm aware of a lot of the clients that I work with that, you know, some of the facts and figures around that. So I'm just going to share those because I did the research to actually back it up. Cancer symptoms can be difficulty urinating, frequent urination, blood in the urine or semen, erectile dysfunction, pain in the hips, back or chest, weakness or numbness in the legs or feet. Age, it tends to increase with age. The majority of cases occurring in men over 50. In Europe, about 80% of cases are diagnosed in men 65 or older. Genetics, race and ethnicity can have an impact. For example, African, Caribbean or African men have a higher incidence of prostate cancer and are more likely to develop more aggressive forms of the disease. There's hormonal factors, lifestyle factors, environmental exposures such as chemicals and toxins, etc. The early detection is really important through regular screening. Treatment may include surgery, radiation, hormone therapy, chemotherapy, or a combination of these modalities. The 5-year survival rate for prostate cancer in Europe is around 85%, so it's not the death sentence that we originally might have thought it would have been. But it's really early detection is really important. So if you're over 50, get a PSA. Next time you visit your healthcare practitioner, ask for a PSA test. And that's a blood test to record levels of PSA, which is an indicator of potential cancer. The impact on sexual function, basically the prostate is a gland through which the urethra feeds through from the bladder, and it also produces 1/3 of the ejaculate fluid that forms part of the ejaculate. So when there is any treatment or interference with the prostate, it's obviously going to interfere on your urology and the nerves and the nerve endings and the blood flow to the penis. Surgery particularly can damage nerves and blood vessels responsible for erections. That's why early detection is so important, because the earlier you catch it, the less likely you are to get surgery. Recovery post-treatment, depending on what treatment forms are taken. There are medications such as Viagra or Cialis, vacuum erection devices, penile injections or implants, and counselling and support from sexual health specialists. For me, my understanding is that you can't have to pay attention to the physical stuff without also paying attention to the psychological stuff. It just doesn't work. It's a holistic treatment, the recovery. And also use it or lose it. If you don't use it, you will lose it. Growing back sensitivity in the nerve endings and increasing blood flow only happens if you continue to use your genitals, even post-surgery. In all of those circumstances, even if you're not feeling horny, be in touch with your genitals every single day, at least once a day post-surgery. Love yourself, love your body, and be positive around that. The treatment for erectile dysfunction when root cause is diabetes. Does anybody have anything on the panel to share around this, or no? Okay, great. So I've had several clients come to me who've had diabetes. And for those who are unfamiliar, one of the side effects of diabetes is the nerve endings start, particularly in your extremities, the nerve endings start to lose sensitivity. And in extreme cases, this is where people have had limbs amputated or fingers amputated because there's been, basically the nerve endings are there and or not there. How this can affect erections is obviously there's a lot of nerve endings in the penis and in the genital and the pelvic area. So if sensitivity is being lost, then it's going to be very difficult for you to experience an erection. So again, coming back to some of the things that have been suggested during this call, some of this is irreversible. Use it or lose it is always a good one. So continually bringing yourself back to your libido, finding ways of experiencing vitality, sensitivity, coming into your body, exploring sensations other than your penis, and working with your sexual energy that is not penis focused. And then just following everything that the guys have shared here today around sex is not just about your cock. Yeah. Julian, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, just quickly referencing back to that pyramid. So if neurology is diminished and sensitivity physiologically, anatomically has been diminished, those other two poles. So your focus, where do I bring my focus of my eros? To my partner, to my own body, how it looks, sending love to, the opposite of the porn problem. If you have to rely upon your body, your where you're putting your attention and the visual meaning and significance, the relationship, how much I love my partner, how much she or they love me, allowing those into roots in the central nervous system and the innervation of the penis rather than peripheral stimulation could be supportive for those people.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Graham.
Just on the back of that as well, I think the core of most of these practices for me is that people can become a master of their own body and their own energy system and their own arousal. And usually the first stage of mastery is self-love and self-acceptance as we are. So when I used to put depression and anxiety management programs together for mental health charities, when I was working with men then, the first invitation would be, as they arrive with depression and anxiety, would be to allow themselves to be depressed and anxious, but with compassion and love. And that was usually the foundation. So I'm just kind of sensing into how that could feed into working with men and just, allowing them to relax into themselves and start to explore what their routes to pleasure are based on their experience of that moment. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you. The role of shame and how this impacts on men's sexuality.
I believe that shame is like the surface level and the top level to go through before delving really deeper into these issues. Like, to be able to have open and honest conversation and talking about this is level one. And if you're overcome with shame and you're not able to verbalize what's going on for you, it can really, really hold you back. And as we were talking about earlier on about the effects on the next generation, like, if we as the sort of wisdom keepers in society are not able to have open and honest conversation between ourselves, like, how are we supposed to speak to this next generation of young kids who are going through a completely different sexual revolution with regard to technology, etc.? So it's so important that we in ourselves, like, reduce shame by starting to open up and have these conversations. Go to circles. Just start to talk. There's a favorite quote of mine that shame dies when stories are told in safe spaces. So find those safe spaces to go to and share your story, and that's level one for dropping into the bigger aspects of this subject.
Shame shuts things down. I also look at it like a funny hat that you're embarrassed of, that you put on top of judging yourself as wrong or not worthy of pleasure, or and it can hide the power of your vulnerability. So I did some work with a healer that was for an e-course, and she was saying, what if your shame was the most high celebrity, that the best people in society were those who showed their shame as this treasure? Ooh, look at my shame. And what would be there? What's the power in that vulnerability that the shame is hiding from the world? So I think sometimes looking into those things, and what are we not, judging ourselves as wrong and then wearing the shame hat on top of, as Sean said, it's the first layer. Like, okay, what's hidden under that hat that I'm ashamed of? And you don't need to share that, but you might go to places where it's safe to share that, but acknowledging it in yourself, accepting it. And that's the first step for me too, for sure.
So shame, I mean, if we look at the psychological model, that anything that gets trapped in the body was just simply our consciousness or awareness wasn't mature enough or present enough in that moment to process it. So it gets locked into us. So, you know, with shame, I guess reiterating what both Sean and Julian have said, it's just the quality of consciousness or awareness or presence that we can meet that sensation in the body, whether that's through meditative or mindfulness practice, or that's through in a sharing circle, to be able to bring that out into the light of compassion, so it can be transmuted and passed through the body, which of course is going to take a different level of time for different people, depending on, you know, how they're able to process that. So
thank you. And just to add to that, Brené Brown, watch her two TED Talks on shame and vulnerability. Yeah, she's quite amazing. My sense is that when shame is present, we go into our fight or flight or defensive strategies, which again is about safety. We don't feel safe. And when we don't feel safe because we're in our shame, then obviously that's going to impact our ability to connect with another human, connect with our own body, and connect with our own arousal. So inevitably. I do have one more question, which is quite a personal share from somebody in the audience. My previous partner shamed me for wanting penetrative sex, which has now affected my ED.
Just to share and be open, I had a similar response with a partner that once said, "You're terrible at sex, go and buy a book on it." And so I went and bought a book on it, and it just reflected everything that I was doing. So that confused me even more. But the way that I processed that within my body was, again, just I actually, luckily enough, my partner now is a very experienced, you know, within this world, and she was just able to literally stroke it out of me, the shame, just through my nervous system, and it just processed through my nervous system that way. So again, self-love, touch, conscious self-love can be a beautiful way of processing that. So yeah.
I've just had a client with the same thing. They met, they were so sexual together. He felt liberated for the first time in his life, and then something happened for her, and penetrative sex was off the table, and his libido shut down and erectile dysfunction kicked in. So I'm working with them as a couple, and when you said that, I was just like, oh my gosh, it was very powerful that he had never had any trouble with erections, but when she no longer wanted penetrative sex, and for them it seemed to be the only thing on their cards. So like Graham has said, they're now seeking support on how to touch and stroke and be with each other, so that the safety, as Sian has framed, returns in the relationship. And his sexual pulse disappeared, so she can't relate to he wanted penetrative sex, she doesn't want penetrative sex, but now his has disappeared. She doesn't trust him anymore because he still wants her, but his body's not responding. So waking our honesty up and getting in touch with his sexual vitality and his love for his penis, they both see is going to be really important for her to be able to feel all of him, so that she can choose again to open or to not, or to do other things in the bedroom. So that hit me, your question.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to bring this to a close now. I'm aware of the time, and I just want to say that we've talked quite practically about how to work with erectile dysfunction. And I think for me, and I notice myself getting a bit emotional about this, the thing for me is that I'm tapping in now to my compassion for everyone who experiences difficulties in intimacy, and want to acknowledge how difficult it can be to step into the vulnerability of communicating and healing and working through what's going on for you. And although this has been a very practical discussion, we are all very compassionate human beings. We work with this kind of vulnerability on a regular basis, and just want to honour all of you who are on this journey to find deeper and more meaningful and more satisfying sexual and connected experiences. So thank you very much, all of you folks, for joining us today. And definitely, I'm going to thank 𝗏𝗏𝗏 for your beautiful space holding. Thank you for keeping us all safe. And thank you, Graham Waterfield. And thank you, Julian Marcus. And thank you, Sean. Thank you very much indeed.